Should we just get started? Great. Let me call this to order. Can you do the roll call?
Committee Member Arciniega. Committee Member Barajas.
Here.
Committee Member Murray.
Here.
Committee Member Ospina. Committee Member Pereira.
Here.
Committee Member Solano.
Here.
Co-Chair Brokaw.
Here.
Co-Chair Zucker.
Here. All right. Stand the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do a motion to approve the minutes.
I so move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstention? Opposed? All right. Starting the agenda here, approve the County Executive Office Human Resources Department's recommended program staff job description, salary and benefits, containing modified language directed by the committee, and receive information regarding options for committee members to participate on the interview panels.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Zucker.
Oh, so sorry. Do you want me to repeat that? Or?
Okay. We have for you a stack, a PowerPoint stack. It's and my colleague will be going through on the screen, clicking as I talk. It's a very brief stack today. So last time we spoke, we went through the job description. So our goal today is to review one more time with you the job descriptions. We have one recommended change from last time that we'll discuss later on. We would like to review with you and get your feedback on the recruitment process. And last time I think there was some discussion about how the selection panel process was going to work, and we can get direction from you about, if you know at this time, whether you'd approve the selection panel being comprised of one farm worker representative and one owner representative, and then there'd be a couple of representatives from the department. And we can talk to you more at length about the detail of that later on in the stack. So going on to the next slide, we'll talk to you a little bit about the and you can gain some comfort level and give us feedback on the outreach. First, when we create a job announcement, I think we mentioned last time that once you approve, it'll go to the board, and then once the board approves the job specs, we'll start the recruitment process. So we would do an outreach effort that's comprehensive, I think. So, and we send announcements to a list of stakeholders and contacts from two organizations such as MyCop and anyone else that you would let us know would be an appropriate target. We'd also advertise in local and regional placements such as the radio, Spanish-speaking, Spanish language newspapers, social media, and of course our own county recruitment website. Some of the Spanish language newspapers we advertise in are Vida and La Opinion. They are, I think, appropriate. We have a practice of placement in those. We also do BC Star, and we often put it on Career Builder, and that gets picked up by Indeed.com, and so it gets spread actually nationally. So our social media, we have LinkedIn and Facebook. I have to say those are not necessarily the most widely utilized mediums for advertising, but we do put it there. Next, we would post the job announcement. The job announcement itself would be in Spanish and English. The recruitment would not have, the reason why we say it's a continuous recruitment is, in our world, we sometimes just post it for a time certain period, but in this case, because it may be difficult to recruit, we've never recruited for this, we do a continuous recruitment. And we would just leave it out there until we have enough applications on file. Some of this may seem redundant or obvious, but in the interest of transparency, that's what we would do. Once we feel we have enough applicants, we would just basically start the examination process. Now, we always accept online and paper applications. Some people like to do it online, but others don't necessarily have access to computers. The application itself, there's a county application that has the basic information on it, such as name, address, job experience. But it does include supplemental questions. And we would include supplemental questions just in the event we need to do an initial screening. Those supplemental questions will gauge really what kind of experience and knowledge they have. So that's a first cut. Staff, it's the Human Services Agency, Human Resources staff would look at the resumes, and they would look at, not resumes, the applications to determine those who meet the requirements, and obviously those who don't meet the minimum requirements would be just screened out immediately. I'm going through this so that you know it's not a haphazard process. It's a very well-defined process. So the next step, once we get all the applications in, we feel that we have enough, we would notify all the qualified applicants of an examination process. The job bulletin, the job notice actually has some of the information about the examination process. But we would invite the qualified applications in for the examinations. There's the examination process, we have yet to write it, but basically it would cover questions regarding the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are in the job description. So I would anticipate primarily it's going to focus in on their knowledge of labor laws and resources available, perhaps some questions regarding their abilities to communicate effectively and to facilitate resolution, and some regarding the agricultural industry. The interview panel, it's going to be an oral examination, so although it'll look like an interview, it's actually an examination. Each question, every candidate will be asked the exact same question. There's no deviations from the follow-up questions or anything of that. Each answer is then graded by the panel, and you'll see later on that the grading becomes important because candidates are then put in standings, and I'll show you what those standings look like. The interview panel will be subject matter experts to be determined who those are, but we will certainly try to find English, Spanish, and Mixteco speakers in the interview panel. And the acceptable communication will be in at least 2 languages required to pass. So, and I can describe that a little bit right now. So one of the things I want to draw your attention to, and this is a good juncture to do that, is the job specifications that we have. You will see that there are red line versions. One is for the coordinator, the other one is for the assistant. There's very few changes, and all the changes were discussed last time. And I would ask that you take a look. And I think as we discussed, we changed on coordinator the job title to say Agriculture, Community, Labor Relations, and Resources Coordinator. We also changed on the next page on the qualification guidelines that they would have dispute resolution, agriculture workplace, I'm going to read it, knowledge of labor and working condition issues, preferably related to the agriculture workplace, community organizations and resources, problem-solving techniques, dispute resolution, referral techniques, principles of supervision and project management, and applicable federal and state labor laws and ordinances. Those are knowledge. So you can see what we added. In the next paragraph, we added facilitate dispute resolution, and towards the end of the paragraph, and you can see in the recruitment standards. Those are, if you have any comments on those, or if anything jumps out at you. Now, on the assistant, let me know. On the assistant, I would draw your attention to the same things, but I do want to draw your attention to the special requirements section, and I would recommend a change to what we amended last time. Under special requirements, we have this is page 2, bottom of page 2. We have what's listed in there: fluency in English and Mixteco or Spanish, and then a semicolon, or fluency in Mixteco and Spanish. And I would recommend, upon much thought and consideration on our side, I would recommend we delete the or fluency in Mixteco and Spanish, because that contemplates that the person doesn't speak any English whatsoever. And based upon our reflection of this, it would be very difficult for that person, in our opinion, to actually conduct their job. Last, I think on the fly, when we were trying to think on the spot, we suggested maybe they could do relay translations. We think that would be difficult. We think that each person hired should have some understanding and fluency in English. It would be preferable, of course, if they have fluency in English, Spanish, and Mixteco. But we think at least one of the languages that they speak should be in English, because the assistant often, we think they would be by themselves. They wouldn't have the coordinator and the assistant in the same place always. The assistant might be at a work site. They may be speaking to a farm worker, and they may also have to speak to farm owners. Not everyone is fluent in Spanish and Mixteco, and that may cause a problem. Additionally, when you go back to the office and they need to find the resources, it might be difficult to find those resources. The state and local agencies that relate to labor relations, it may be difficult if they speak no English. That's an opinion, it's a judgment on our part, and I would put it forth for your consideration to, in the ideal world, it shouldn't be an issue, but I think it will become an issue if they speak no English whatsoever.
And also for consideration, it will then put that extra. And for consideration, that was part of our discussion, is that then the coordinator would have to then take on a lot more in addition to already being out there doing the outreach and the communication to relay the information to the assistant. So this would put a little bit more on that with the coordinator staffer themselves. So something to also consider as far as with the recommendation that Sean was requesting to us.
I think our concern is that at least one of these staff people is fluent in Mixteco. And I don't know how we can put that in these descriptions, because it could be either one. But that somehow has to be understood by the interview panel.
Yeah, I think that would be something we can do in the recruitment process, where we say it's highly desirable, and certainly in the selection stage of the process, where they have already been passed through some of the exams, we can definitely have that as a consideration in the selection process also.
I think I'm just concerned about the pool of people who are trilingual, right? I mean, you gotta be pretty smart, experienced, and talented person to really be fluent in 3 languages, and I think there's very few people who are, I guess I'd ask maybe now, your organization goes through a lot of hiring processes. How often, do you have folks who are all 3 fluent in English, Spanish, and Mixteco? My thought is, I feel like I have met people who are fluent in all 3, but not a lot, and I think what can be more common is like 2.5, you know, where you speak English but maybe not totally fluent, and are fluent in Spanish and Mixteco. But I would also guess if we require fluency in English, I could see something happening like hiring someone who's fluent in English and Spanish, but not really fluent in Mixteco, maybe speaks Mixteco, but is not like super fluent. And I would be really worried what that would do to compromise the goals of the program, right? If we end up getting that, and and I just worry about that happening. So yeah, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think for me, I see like the coordinator. Maybe it could be like fluent in English and Spanish, and the assistant fluent in Spanish and Mixteco, and maybe some English, because when you're going to deal with, let's say there's an issue in a company, all the supervisors I can say, or maybe so many of them are fluent in Spanish. And English too, and that way the assistant can deal with the supervisor in Spanish and Mixteco, because we not only focusing in Mixteco farm workers, we also focusing all farm workers, and we still have a lot of farm workers who speak only Spanish, but the main is Mixteco, but Spanish too. In that way, I see the assistant fluent in Spanish and Mixteco.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a useful point too, that often maybe the farm owner is only English speaking, but they're 100% of the time going to have somebody who's their supervisor on the ground who is Spanish speaking, right? And so if someone is kind of going to the farm and needing to kind of assess the situation and talk to some people, there's probably, there's almost always going to be a supervisor who is Spanish speaking who they can interact with, and if needed, I think they can, call their partner who's English speaking to when you get to more mediation session. But I would guess in that kind of more mediation conversation, that's more planned and prepared, and you could prepare to have both people in the room. But,
yeah, I agree with it from that perspective in terms of interacting on the employer side of the equation. I don't think someone involved in the program that does not speak English will have much of a hurdle to get over on the employer side. Where I do get a little more concerned, and it's a question for you, Jamal, is how do you feel about having someone involved in the program that has to navigate more of the county side of things with the agencies, and getting on the farm is one thing, but when you start getting into the government level and trying to build bridges with people in different programs, do you feel like that might be a hindrance? I mean, these are all trade-offs, right?
Yeah, but there's always a chance or people from the agency that speaks Spanish. Not very fluent, but there's some kind of level of Spanish. And my concern is if we have like English and some Mixteco and not Spanish, that is my concern. But if we have the coordinator speaking very well, very fluent in English and Spanish, and then the assistant, like I said, fluent in Spanish and Mixteco, I think is going to be a good group. A good group to work, because the coordinator can work with the agencies, and the assistant can work with directly with the farm workers and the growers. Is what I can imagine.
yeah, and in terms of the chain translation, I mean, we've been doing chain translation for almost every one of these meetings, right? It's worked pretty well. I think it's challenging, but it's something that there are people prepared to do. But yeah, I guess I'm just really concerned. I think there's less than 1% of the population of this county is trilingual, and this county probably has more or trilingual in English, Spanish, and Mixteco, right? And this county probably has the most trilingual English, Spanish, and Mixteco people of probably any county in the United States. Or I don't know if that's true, but has one of the highest. But it's still it's just very rare to speak 3 languages. It's
Juvenile, what percentage of farm workers in this county would you say are Mixteco? What percentage of farm workers in this county would you say are Mixteco? I mean, if you had to give me a number, would you say? Mixteco speaking.
I don't have that exact number,
No, I know, but I mean,
yeah, I can say like in the if I can say in the strawberries, in the berries, I think like 60% of the whole
That's very
of the
crucial.
whole force are Mixtecos, but more of them maybe speak Spanish and Mixteco, more Mixteco than Spanish, but they are speaking a little bit of Spanish.
the point I was trying to make is crucial that we have a Mixteco speaking assistant. I mean, it has to, it needs to happen.
Well, I appreciate your consideration. I mean, you are far more knowledgeable in how it works on the field. We were trying to forestall potential issues where, potentially they wouldn't be able to communicate with people who are only English language speakers, and so that was the source of the recommendation. But our goal is certainly for this program to succeed and to be effective. So if you think that that's the way it would be most effective, then certainly we will take that action. Okay, great.
I have another question on the knowledge section in both descriptions.
Sure.
Where it says knowledge of community organizations and resources. That would effectively eliminate anybody who isn't already living in the county. And that's not our intention, I don't believe. That's something, if you come from the outside, you can learn. It would be ideal if people were ready to run from the get-go, but we need to be able to hire people from elsewhere.
I think the two thoughts on that, Commissioner or community member. Community organizations is intended to be general, not necessarily Ventura County community organizations. Furthermore, the education and experience is where the minimum requirements are looked at. Any combination of education, training, or experience in labor relations, human resources, or community outreach, or comparable education which has led to the acquisition of the knowledge, of the required knowledge and abilities. That's really the critical aspect of when an application is submitted, where we look at whether they meet the experience or not.
More than the knowledge paragraph.
Qualification guidelines are, those are guidelines.
Guidelines, okay.
The recruiting standards really look to the minimum requirements that we look for. So
Okay.
we really wouldn't be excluding anyone if they were from, say, Santa Barbara or Los Angeles County or elsewhere.
Okay.
Okay, so the bilingual examination will be then to certify proficiency in the combinations of Mixteco and Spanish or English and Mixteco or Spanish. So they will not need to speak English, but we'll need to make sure they're at least bilingual in in 2 of those languages. Okay? So that'll be part of the examination process. It'll be a pass-fail, whether they will hit the language proficiencies. And I think we talked earlier that the coordinator bilingual requirement will be more rigorous than the assistants, as far as the higher level bilingual proficiency. So once they pass the exam, or once the exam is conducted and scored, then those candidates will be put in standings. And this is exactly how the standings are. And this is hard-coded in our personnel rules. So all examinations, when they're graded, they fall in the following standings. And then candidates are interviewed by another panel, which is then the examination process is done once the list is certified. Then they'll be interviewed by a selection panel, and the selection panel is not looking at their knowledge or skills, but they're looking for fit more generally. But the way they're interviewed is they go off standing 1 first, and then they go to standing 2, and then they go to standing 3. So if say a candidate is known to be in standing number 4, we're not going to be interviewing that person until the selection panel has gone through standing 1 through 3 and determined that for one reason or another, that even though they passed the examinations, there's something in their background or in their answers that they didn't find suitable. So typically we unless there's a very small pool of candidates, we typically hand the selection panel the top 3 candidates in each standing. They look at the 3 candidates, they go through them, and then hopefully they decide that they like one of the 3. But if they don't, then they tell us, and then we give them the next 3. And that's intended to stop, or it's intended to keep the pool blind so that you don't have someone in mind and you just go through the whole pool until you get to the person. So these are standard procedures that we follow as part of our merit process. Okay.
Because we know that depending on who we find, the distribution of duties and the abilities to handle those duties may be different between the 2 people we hire. Will the panel be looking at both candidates for both jobs at the same time? Because I don't think a decision can be made on hiring for one job without a decision on the other one.
I completely agree, and I think that's a nice cue in for the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
If I may. No, I think that's exactly the kind of questions that we think everyone should be asking. So our recommendation is that the first panel be as mentioned previously, a grower representative, a farm worker representative, and 2 representatives from the Human Services Agency, and Barry Zimmerman will designate who those people are. Presumably they'll be in the management chain of command. But that they will first hire the coordinator. So this first set of selections or interviews in the selection process will be to hire the coordinator. Then, once that person's being hired, and so there'll be a time lag because they'll have to go through background and so forth. Then the next, the panel will make a recommendation, and the HSA director, Barry, and his designee, his or her designee, will make the final hiring decision. Normally, I have to say, in a normal course of events, although there's always exceptions, the cream rises to the top. It's pretty. It's usually clear who's a great candidate and who's not. But there are occasions where there's disagreements. That's why Barry or his designee will be the tiebreaker. And it's really their decision, or the appointing authority's decision. Once that coordinator position is filled, then the next hiring panel will presumably include the coordinator, who will be the co-worker of the assistant, and they'll go through the same process.
That's exactly what I'm saying won't work in this instance.
Okay.
Is there a way? I know it would be very messy to be interviewing candidates for both jobs at the same time, but seems to me, in the real world, that the panel would have to be able to see that between the two people, everything was covered. And that would mean doing them both together. I don't know, would the rest of you weigh in? Do you think this is important?
One comment, if I may. The reason why we said that, and then of course it'll be your thoughts would be most welcome, is that the coordinator and the assistant have to work hand in glove. We thought it would be difficult if the coordinator didn't have a hand in picking the assistant, because essentially it will be a supervising role for the coordinator and the assistant.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I do think I agree with Ellen if possible. I mean, I know there might be logistical difficulties, but it's true that we've kind of talked a lot about a set of skills that we need covered between two people, and we've talked about the challenges of having, we from the beginning talked about the challenge of having one person that has all those skills, right? And most likely they're going to be, we might have language skills that are kind of divided between the three people, or we might have kind of more technical legal skills or mediation skills that are kind of more divided between the two people. And I do think maybe there's a way that we could do a bunch of interviews and then kind of concurrently and then make a final decision, right? Together. I mean, it seems like, so I've been on a county hiring panel before, and it's kind of one day of interviews, right? I mean, if we were to do, say, one day of interviews on a Tuesday and another day of interviews on a Thursday, and then kind of be able to weigh them together and make the decision. And I hear what you're saying around it's helpful to have the supervisor interview the person that's supervising, but that to me could be something that could be sacrificed in order to make sure that we're getting a team with the right skill set. But I don't know. Yeah, what do other think?
I kind of think hiring the coordinator up front and then the assistant, you by knowing who the coordinator is, it would be easier to find an assistant to complement him. That's how I see it, personally. But I could see your argument as well, hiring him, interviewing them both together, but I don't see an issue with the, coordinator being hired first and finding someone to complement his skills, or finding a good complementary assistant for him.
I guess if we use your approach, Ellen, it would be an approach of doing parallel interviews. So it's more a question of timing. It's not one then the other. It's everything at once, and then you kind of look at it as a package, right? Versus the other proposal is to hire one before the other.
I know one of them is a supervisor, but I really picture this as more of a team. And if we excuse me for interrupting you, Dave.
Oh, that's okay.
If we hire the main guy or girl first, and they speak Spanish and English, then we know that we have to find Mixteco with the assistant, and we may not have a candidate. So I just think the mentality for this has to be, this is a team, and we've got to look at them together.
No, we agree that it is a team, and that's why we wanted to make sure the two
Are compatible.
Are compatible and could work well together.
That's hard for somebody else to judge.
Do you see what Ellen's proposing is a difficult thing to try to accomplish logistically? Is there any?
No, it's not difficult logistically. I mean, I think that we run all the time parallel recruitments and parallel interviews. It's just the reason why we put it out there is that it's very, very important that these two not only have complementary skill sets, but I'm sure everyone appreciates if you're charged with performing a task, you kind of want want a hand in picking a team member. So we thought that would be advisable to do it that way. It's technically possible to make job offers, the director to make those job offers on the same day. But it would be guesswork whether the two of them would get along well and whether that person would have been the pick of the coordinator. And I think one of the, you don't want the unintended consequence of they're oil and water, they don't get along together.
Let me ask this question. Is there a way that you could have both by creating a circumstance where you're conducting the testing and also the interviewing simultaneously, but then kind of understand the landscape a little bit before you choose, then decide to hire the coordinator, and kind of do the first piece as one parallel operation, and then decide to do the second piece. So then you're kind of doing both. You're achieving both goals, I guess.
Right. So maybe the kind of applicant pool process is gathering around the same time, but then you hire the coordinator first, but you're kind of hiring them already kind of having a sense of who's the pool who's applied for the other position, and you're like, oh, we didn't get a whole lot of Mixteco speakers, so we really need, or whatever that may be.
Yes, certainly. I think that's how I contemplated it would occur, that we would advertise both, we would collect applications for both, we would roughly do the examinations at about the same time. Then when it came to the selection, you'd get the coordinator, you'd select the coordinator, you'd have that person go through a background, and then once they're on board, then final interviews would occur to get the assistant in place.
That seems fine to me.
Kind of seems like it hits everything, right?
I'd be really curious to see. So you're the only one here as an HR person. I mean, what's your perspective on this?
So I'm concerned about the timeline from hiring the first one to hiring the second one, because in reality, that person may have to give notice on a perhaps current job. By the time they come on board, they get acquainted with the program and what is expected. To be able to then hire the assistant, it could be 1 to 2 months. That what is that person going to be doing for 1 to 2 months if that other half is not there? So that would be a concern. I like the idea of doing, set of interviews on a Tuesday and the other set on Wednesday or Thursday, and then you have a very good idea of the pool of applicants. In my experience, it's probably going to be easier to find somebody, let's say, with labor law experience, but not in ag, right? So you want to be able to find that complement in the other, to both of your points, in the other person, because it's a lot more likely to find those skills, but not in ag. So I prefer the idea of hiring both at the same time, so that then they're a team, they go and they know what they're charged with and they work together. I mean, even if you choose who you're going to hire, it's no guarantee that they're going to get along or that. So that would be
It's hard to know
my
if you're going to get
concern.
along with someone based on a 30-minute interview,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you for your feedback. Okay. Offers of employment are contingent on background check and employment eligibility verification. And then the HSA director will negotiate start date, compensation, and other work condition arrangements. So often, yes, the whole giving a notice, exactly when to start, it may vary based on their particular situation. Compensation may vary based on what they're making now, how good a negotiator they are. So those are the considerations that we have for you. Is there? So we've received the feedback on the job description. It'll remain as is, from what I understand. Is the committee able to nominate representatives today, or how will that work for the selection panels? That's a question I think we don't need it today clearly, but we need to know who to contact to ask if they'd be willing to participate or coordinate timelines.
That's a good question.
That was a question.
I nominate Juvenal. I think he's gonna have to assess the Mixteco.
And I nominate Dave.
I agree.
Looks like a good pair to me.
Oh, pues.
Yeah, do they get a choice in the matter?
I always thought people didn't show up to meetings got nominated for stuff. I know they get Jessica.
That's Ellen's way of saying I need to pull more of my weight.
Okay. Is that the will of the committee?
Okay with you guys?
How many interviews do you expect this to be?
Well,
How many
actually, it
sessions?
really depends on the number of qualified and high caliber candidates that you want. So it could be a lot or not that many. So you get them in batches of 3. If you like one of the first 3, you're good to go. If you can go on to the end and interview multiple. So I can't give you a number. Right? It could be one day or a couple days, or one or both.
Can I make a suggestion to have an alternate for each one of us, just in case travel arrangements or other responsibilities take hold?
I nominate Giselle as alternate. We're supposed
Danny,
to
you
travel a lot.
volunteer.
That might not work.
And I'll nominate Lucas.
What happened to picking on the people who aren't here? No, I'm I'll say it.
Great. Well, thank you for bearing through it. And I think that concludes our presentation.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for dealing with our pushback too.
It's your call. Thank you. Okay, wonderful.
So, is there anything else you wish to ask this time before you make a motion? Because you will be at this time approving the language as submitted you will be approving the language as submitted on the documents that you received, and in addition, the nominations so far of which you have nominated Juvenal and Lucas as the alternate, and then Dave and Giselle as the alternate to selection panels.
We should probably do public comment too before we make that report. Anyone have anything else before we do public comment? Well, yeah, let's open up for public comment now on the job descriptions and hiring process. If anyone has anything to say, 3 minutes for public comment.
Buenas noches.
Good evening.
Mi pregunta es acerca de
My question
lo
is
que están diciendo de los
regarding
coordinadores.
the
¿Es una
coordinator.
propuesta o es confirmación
Is this a proposal or a confirmation
de que sepa hablar bilingüe
that the person needs to be bilingual?
de mixteco y
Mixteco
español?
and Spanish?
Mi preocupación es
My concern is this.
si hay alguien que solo habla mixteco
If there's someone who only speaks Mixteco
y tiene la suficiente experiencia,
and has enough experience,
porque estamos hablando del 60%, 70%
because
que
we're
trabaja
talking
en el
about
campo.
60 to 70% of people who work in the fields.
y conoce todo el campo de lo que
Someone who
es
knows
el trabajo,
the entire field of work.
y sería una barrera que no hablara bien
So it
español,
would be a barrier if the person didn't speak Spanish well,
porque estamos hablando de una equidad,
because we're talking about equity.
y pues el lenguaje no tiene que ser una barrera para hacer un
And
cambio.
language shouldn't be a barrier for a change.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
So we have these 4 items.
El primero, por favor, explicar
Number 1, please explain
cómo sería la guía para el proceso de una resolución
what would be the guideline of a process of resolution
en anonimato.
of anonymity.
El empleador o empleadora, un ejemplo,
For example, the employer, male or female,
si una empleada quiere pedirle al empleador que firme
or if a woman employee is requesting from the employer
que está haciendo un reporte sobre el problema de acoso o
a
abuso,
signature because that employee is being harassed
en el trabajo,
at work,
pero el empleador desea estar en anónimo,
but the employer wishes to remain anonymous,
¿cómo se resolvería el problema?
how would you be able to resolve this problem?
El segundo,
Second,
requisitos del programa para el personal.
what are the requirements of the program for the staff?
Recomendamos que la persona contratada
We recommend that the person you hire
a este programa esté
for this
capacitada,
program
tenga experiencia de cómo
is
manejar
capable, has experience in knowing
casos sensibles que
how to
incluyen
handle sensitive cases, including
el acoso sexual,
sexual harassment,
habilidades de comunicación
the ability to communicate,
y el trato hacia la persona trabajadora
and dealing with workers,
y sensibilidad dentro del contexto.
and the sensitivity within the context.
Para tomar casos o reportes de acoso sexual,
In order to be able to take cases and reports of sexual harassment,
incluyendo la mujer campesina y la mujer indígena.
including the women field workers and the indigenous women.
Tercer punto,
Third,
otro requisito del programa para el
another
personal,
requirement for hiring someone for the program
recomendamos la
is that
capacitación
we recommend training
y el conocimiento de la diversidad
and
cultural
knowledge of cultural diversity,
para que el trato hacia la persona trabajadora
so
agrícola
that the treatment to the field worker
se base en el propio contexto cultural.
were based within a cultural context.
Y cuarto punto,
And fourth,
los comentarios del público se recomienda
public comments.
que todas las sugerencias,
We recommend that
preocupaciones
all concerns, all suggestions,
y comentarios del público
and all
se sigan,
public comments
se sigan documentando en la agenda del sitio del web program.
continue to be documented in the WAVE program.
Esos son los casos.
Those are my 4 issues.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? I don't know if anyone want to address any of the questions asked in those public comments.
I think we've tried to deal with all those issues. The first question about how someone remains anonymous, the worker who comes forward with a complaint has the option to say they don't want to sit down and meet with their employer and they want the staff person to represent their interests in trying to resolve the issue with the employer. So I think that's the option that's available in the program. I'm not sure if we've covered in our language the testimony about the need to have sensitivity, knowledge of cultural diversity. That's certainly something that we all agree with and believe in.
I think on that, it seems like we definitely have it in here. We have competency in addressing sensitive issues such as sexual harassment, right? That was in the kind of original program description. You know, looking at the job descriptions, we've got this, which I think is as close as we've got to it. So we could think about, you know, adopting stronger language there, but exercise sound judgment, tact, and sensitivity in interactions with community members from a variety of backgrounds.
May I say something? So we have in the county many job descriptions. I think there are about 1,300 job descriptions, and we have 9,000 employees. The purpose of a job description is really to give a very broad brush overview of what it is. Obviously, the skills and duties on the job are a lot more detailed, and that's frankly part of your selection interview. That you're going to really assess in an interview in depth what experiences this person had in sensitive issues, what judgment they have in deciding how to handle a sensitive case. These are the things you kind of delve into in an interview, and I think that's perfectly valid. But I don't particularly recommend going into a lot more detail here because you're just never going to capture everything in a job description.
I mean, I think that between this original kind of guiding document here, where it lays out explicitly sexual assault, which is more detailed, and this where it does talk about sensitivity, to me, I think that covers it okay, given that some of us are going to be in the hiring panel. But yeah, how do others feel?
Regarding the first speaker's point that we should allow for hiring a monolingual Mixteco speaker because that's the clientele that we will mostly be serving, and it may not be possible to find a bilingual. We will be serving a lot of people from the indigenous community, but we'll be serving others as well, so I just wanted to say that. I suppose if we, and this is a question for you, Sean, if we can't find somebody who's bilingual, we really do have a bottom line necessity to have a Mixteco speaker on the staff. So could there be a fallback that we hire a monolingual Mixteco speaker?
Well, as written, it's written as at least a bilingual.
Right.
We could change it, but again, that's a call to you. I think it would. Again, I think bilingual would cover. Again, if you give us the discretion, we can always amend job descriptions and thus recruitment standards. But I think it's worth a try. As a, you don't know what you don't know, and it's worth a try to know a bit about it.
This is really a question for you again.
Are we suggesting hiring an assistant that would potentially that would just speak Mixteco?
Well, that was the point of the first public speaker.
Yeah.
That we should allow that to be possible.
How would he communicate with the coordinator? I mean, the coordinator and the assistant need to communicate with each other. I don't think that's that's just a non-starter.
And I'd also worry that, particularly, for example, the Santa Clara Valley, Santa Paula, Fillmore, Piru, it's really not Mixteco speaking population, right? And I would worry about our equity of serving throughout our community and serving that part of the community of the and I think particularly because the assistant is the outreach person, right? They're the one who's probably going to be leading a lot of the, creating awareness about the program. If they only spoke Mixteco and not Spanish, I would worry that we'd leave out a good part of our community.
Yeah, it's a very hard question. Yeah. Like I said, how I see it is Spanish and Mixteco. Yeah, because monolingual, I think, is a very great idea, but I don't see it in this program because this monolingual Mixteco speaker need to communicate with other workers, not only Mixteco. Yeah.
I think we covered the issues raised in public comment. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Entertain a motion to adopt this job description process.
Would that include, again, also the nominations, as previously stated?
Right, the nominations to be on the hiring committee? Yes.
I'll move.
And I'll set. Go ahead.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's great, Myra.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
All right. I'm supposed to be saying the next thing. All right. Next on our agenda, we have reconsider of the program leadership section of the Farmworker Resource Program description to revise the committee's continued involvement, structure, and meeting frequency. So you can see in the back of your packet here, program leadership, it says advisory committee tasked with the design, creation, monitoring, and evaluation of the program. And that comes from the original board letter that was passed by the Board of Supervisors. And then we added 1 month following the program staff's hire date, the staff to report back to the Farmworker Resource Program Advisory Committee. And after that, then provide updates to the committee every 6 months. So we talked a little bit about at our last meeting about changing that. Do we want more frequently, less frequently? Do we want to put an end date to that? Do we want to allow for the possibility of us kind of swapping in alternates if this is going to be kind of an ongoing, forever kind of advisory committee? Is it a formal kind of advisory committee that's Brown Act and making recommendations to the supervisors, or do we want something more informal entirely?
Can I just really quickly, before the discussion continues any further, if you could please make a motion to first approve the reconsideration, and then we can get into discussion.
Okay.
Please.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right. You want to move to approve reopening this section?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any thoughts anyone has here?
I've been thinking about the start of the program, which involves a lot of outreach, and how would these two new staff people conduct the outreach without input from those of us in both the farm worker and the grower community? I don't know. Did Mary leave? Melissa, are you here? Yeah. I don't know how it could be. I think the staff people need to have access to us, but I'm not sure how that can be structured without us being interfering.
I mean, they certainly have access to us, and I assume one of the first things they're going to do, the day they start work, is reach out to all of us to meet individually. I think the question is more, do we need to meet? When do we need to meet as an advisory body, as a group, right?
Well, I think we also need to have some parameters for how much we directly interact with these staff people, because they are employed and supervised by HSA, and we don't want to. We want to be helpful, but we don't want to interfere and be obstructionist.
One of the benefits that I see is offered through this group is the function of having a community comment period. I think that's extremely powerful. It helps give the program us, but as servants of the program, guidance. And so, my thought is more of, I think what we're wanting is input once someone is seated as the person or the people within this program. It may be better to, when I think about it, have these individual conversations, because the reality is we're going to have a longer, deeper, more meaningful conversation as individuals, one-on-one, outside of the context of this environment. That's extremely important to be able to kind of dig into more of the nuances of what this all means and what the industry is all about, and some of the pitfalls maybe for whatever that person is willing to listen to. But I think it's important that we keep this, whether it's this group, we ought to keep this process moving forward, if for nothing more than to give the community an option of saying what they think is working or not working. I think that's powerful. On what frequency, I don't know. 6 months is probably okay. I don't think it needs to be every week, but we should continue this process, whether it's us or not, and probably have a process where we rotate off, or maybe we don't need this board, but it's more just an opportunity for the public to talk.
Well, we have a responsibility ongoing to, what's the language? You just read it.
Monitor.
Design,
To
creation,
monitor and
modeling.
evaluate. So that means we have still work to do. And I think beyond that, this whole program is designed for 1 year. The goals, outcomes, all of it. If we want it to go forward, there needs to be planning for what comes next. So I think we might want to meet a little more often, maybe quarterly.
I do agree also that we need to clarify that process of monitoring. What does that mean? And then do we even have a role in the check and adjust process, right? Depending on the feedback that we're getting or how things are going, do we as a committee have a role in making adjustments or not? So it's just about clarifying, because I think when we started this, speaking for myself, had certain expectations of how it was going to go, even from the process of hiring. And now we're being told, no, well, you can't all be in the hiring panel. And, now it's under the county. And for me, it's just important to clarify then what is our role, our ongoing role. Whatever we decide, it's fine. It's just more about clarification so that we're clear on, if we get feedback, is there a process for making adjustments? If deemed necessary, do we just individually come to whoever the manager ends up being and say, hey, I'm hearing this, or I'm seeing this? Is that going to be the process, or is it going to be more formal where we meet, discuss things, and make recommendations? It's just more about creating that clarity.
I was told before the meeting that at 7:15 we've got to do a break for the transition. It's 7:15 now. I know Melissa was kind of called up, and then I don't know if we had a specific thing for you. Was there something you wanted to ask her specifically, or?
Yes, I wanted you or Barry to comment on how you see us being available for input to these staff people without interfering with the normal processes of supervision.
Right, well, and I think what you're trying to define now is what's the recommendation that you, as an advisory committee, choose to make to the board of supervisors as to how you see this moving on. And based upon that recommendation, based on what the board supports, will then dictate what we do moving forward. And so if the pleasure of the board is to keep this group in place, and as you're maybe referring to a quarterly process, then that would be the venue by which that would occur. I think what's most important is that, as this program gets put into play, we do want to hear from the community if it's not working, and if it's working well, we want to hear, as well as we want to hear concerns, and we'll probably have a protocol by which we do that escalates those types of issues and concerns to the right party within our organization to provide that oversight and responsiveness. That whatever you recommend to the board, then in turn will support whatever venue by which that is defined.
I think, yes, there are really two parts of this. One is what the committee, as a committee, does. But then the other part is how, as individual members of the committee, we might be interacting with these staff people who will actually need our input in their outreach work. How do we do that without slipping into micromanagement and too much interference?
Well, and that's a delicate dance. I think it's important that we understand the proper chain of command around those relationships. I think it's really important that we don't have multiple people giving direction to individuals. And so that's why we'll have management oversight. And I think especially upon implementation of this program, for the manager to ensure the success of this program and that the resources are doing what we've asked them to do and staying within the boundaries of their roles and responsibilities, that we have some conduit of communication so that we understand what the issues are and we can work with the staff to be able to be responsive to those. So I would think we would want to establish an escalation point initially so that we don't have multiple people going to these resources and making them answer given direction, because that's how that can play as a problem. So we need to keep them in their chain of command, and I think the main management oversight would be the single point of contact that we would want to have, at least initially, until we get these resources going and see what the issues are that we're having.
So how would they consult, how would they get the information they need from us for the outreach?
Can we maybe take this up after a break?
Take a break. Sorry. How long a break?
10 minutes. Thank you.
Rosa, I thought of one more thing I had meant to say to Sean on one of his earlier slides.
Okay.
Maybe we can pick up where we left off around the discussion of kind of individual members of us communicating with the program staff. I guess I'll just say that my thoughts on it. I think we obviously all have our own discretion, but I would also hope that the program staff is being informed by their supervisors at HSA that if Lucas calls them 10 times and says, "Hey, you're not doing your job," right? It's the same as any member of the public that probably calls the county all the time complaining about all kinds of things, and some of those complaints may be valid, but at the end of the day, that's not their boss, and we shouldn't be here to micromanage the program, and if some of us overstep our bounds, I hope they're not listening to us.
Yeah, I think something important to keep in mind through this whole process is even us sitting here now coming up with resolutions and documents, we still serve at the pleasure of the board, and when it comes down to it, the board can do whatever they want. And so this is more about us providing guidance, our opinions, but this isn't the rule of law. And so as we decide how we want to continue this, we also have to recognize that, you know, this will be a county employee that serves through a chain of command, and at the end of the day, that chain of command will be the ultimate decision maker along with that person on what they do. They can choose to listen or not listen. The two big goals that I have through seeing this program succeed are, one, allow some form for the public to be involved with, at least commenting on gaining. This program should want feedback, and we should provide an opportunity in some form or another to allow for that feedback, not only for ourselves, not only through this body, or if we choose this is the best way to go, but also the public forum that we have here, some way to get that done. But I do think the feedback piece is extremely important, and because even though I say that, we still have, I think it certainly goes recognized in terms of the types of concerns that we bring up.
It seems like kind of the chain of command. There's feedback, which I hope all county staff and agencies are listening and meeting with various stakeholders they have to work with, and community groups and people in industries that they work with. But then ultimately, in terms of where there's a boss involved and an actual chain of command, it's like, the program staff are accountable to HSA directors, who are accountable to the board of supervisors, who are accountable to the voters, right? And that all of us can give feedback, but then the program staff have the choice whether to take that feedback or not based on that chain of command.
Ideally, I think this formal setting would be the most appropriate setting to do so, and having the staff members report, or at least give us a report as to how things are progressing. Much like Ellen had mentioned, quarterly meetings I think would be appropriate in a formal setting, with public comment being, to have access to public comment, being able to come in and give their opinions as well. I think that would be the most appropriate method to monitor this program.
Yeah, what I like about the formal meetings too is it does put us in that role of, if that chain of command has the board of supervisors here, we are a body that could give a recommendation to the board of supervisors, say, after the first year of this program, we think this should be changed, and the board could take that, idea or not, but then that would allow the program to be tweaked or, redirected after the first year. And we have that kind of role, but it would go through that process rather than us kind of directly to the staff, feeling like we're too managing them. I do think, quarterly meetings for the first year might be helpful. I think maybe we could reconsider after that, after that first year, whether we want to kind of scale back, but
the Board of Supervisors funded this for 1 year. So presumably, this is the group that would bring back to the board a proposal for a second year. If we don't do it, I don't know how it would happen. Unless HSA, once having taken this program on, just keeps it going without us. Is that?
So, I'm so sorry, but just to clarify that the way that it would work now, once the program is determined, HSA would be the one to go back to the board with the data and the information as how the program has been working. Then the board would then make their decision as far as to extend how long the program will continue existing. So that would be one of the things to just kind of keep note of, that would be the way that it would come definitely from Human Services, which I'm sure the board is still going to want, in addition to this committee wanting an update, the board is going to want also updates in addition to this committee. And also, if this committee meets, yes, it would be continued Crown Act applicable, in which the public will also, has been just, these meetings have been welcome to make their comments, and we have taken a lot of their comments into consideration. So we would continue.
Any modifications to the program that the board sees deemed necessary, would they task that with HSA, or would they ask this committee to reconvene and work on those modifications? How do you feel
That
that
would be
would
up
work?
to them at that point. They could directly direct HSA without having to come to the committee. But that also could be something that they could also say, hey, the committee meets, and we would, the quarterly meetings, we would like to know what it is, the information is. You see sometimes in these meetings too, we have supervisor staffs in attendance, so they're also up to date with the discussion that that we are having, not only committee members, but also with the public, and that information is also being relayed back to the supervisors, so they're on, on top of what the discussion is happening, even if they're not here physically themselves, they are being updated regularly by myself also, or their staff members.
That's a very helpful clarification, Rosa, because that means that we would, if we continue, we would become an advisory committee to your department, not to the Board of Supervisors. And in that case, this is a question for you. Can we be a more informal committee, or do we still have to be Brown Act governed?
Is this on? Yes. If the board continues you as a body, it has to be formal. If the 8 of you just decide to hang out together and do whatever you want on your own, then it can be informal. But if it is a board sanctioned body, then yes, it has to be formal.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? So, could it be that the board says, we know HSA is the manager of this program, and certainly that's how the information or their information would flow up, but could the board say, we know that, but we still want a county supervisor sanctioned committee that's outside of HSA to also give us feedback in addition to what HSA says?
Absolutely. I mean, the Board of Supervisors can do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
There are other models where other agencies where that's done. One that comes to mind is like the Mental Health Board for Behavioral Health. They meet monthly, quarterly, and I think the board, at the end of the year, the Board of Supervisors asked that the Mental Health Board write an annual report. I think something along those lines. So it's been a while. I used to be the behavioral health attorney like 15 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. But yes, there are various models that could be constructed to allow input from this committee, if the board chooses to allow it to continue.
It's unclear how long we are supposed to continue.
It is a little, just because we do have the 1-year guarantee. So again, I think within your recommendations to the board, it could be, you comment about having quarterly meetings for the first year, and then maybe if you wish to continue those or decrease them, and we could use that language, which is having quarterly meetings for the first year, and if the program continues, you meet twice a year, whatever you would like to say. We could, again, this is language for them to recommend moving forward. By then, the program has gotten itself a little bit more situated and has had some comments and met. Obviously, the first year is going to be very, very busy for the staffers and HSA, getting it kicked off, and the materials and the meetings. Once it starts getting going and the program exists, the continuance of the program, how you would like to meet as committee members, would be something you could add that language as far as a recommendation. And also the same makeup, to continue the same makeup in which we have 4 representatives from each side, just things to throw out there that stays clear.
When you say a year, you're talking about a year from the hire date of the
program, right?
Yeah.
Right, the effective date as far as they're seeing.
I would think we have to do that since we're supposed to monitor and evaluate.
Right.
Yeah. Regarding replacing people, we were all appointed by my cop and Farm Bureau, so wouldn't it be just when anybody wants to get off the committee, we would ask Barbie were my cop to appoint a replacement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, just to ensure that this committee wants to recommend that we keep the same structure, it's good to just get that, I think, just written down, like I said, since we're having this discussion, especially moving forward.
So we should keep this structure at least for that year and then see.
And meet quarterly.
I would like that.
So are we kind of actually putting in language today and voting to that language? So maybe can I propose some language on those? Yes. So I don't know if we want to keep the 1 month following the program staff's hire date. If we wanted to just do we want quarterly and have just four quarterly meetings in that first year, it could be on a quarterly basis, the staff will report back to the Farmworker Resource Program Advisory Committee for the first year, with potential to meet less frequently after that. I propose that, not locking us into kind of either way, but that we kind of have freedom to decrease those meetings if we wanted to. And then if a committee member chooses to leave the committee, or I guess maybe their appointing organization will appoint a new replacement.
So can I ask a question on the language you propose? Would that mean that we start meeting quarterly after today? The first meeting would be.
I guess it would be
after the
hire date. Yeah, I guess quarterly after the program staff's hire date.
Okay. And we need to specify how staff will report back to us. We need to specify that it will be under a formal setting with availability for public comment and all that. I would assume. I mean, reporting back. I mean, it could be emailing us once a
right.
So
it should be for back in a public meeting with opportunity for public comment. And then logistically, I'm thinking if we keep the starting 1 month following the program staff's hire date, that if there's 4 quarterly meetings, that last quarterly meeting would actually happen a month after the kind of end of the first yearly cycle of the program. Is that okay, or should we just say quarterly, like 4 times from the program's hire date, or we could just have 3 quarterly meetings that first year, right? And then we based on those 3 meetings, the last meeting happens 2 months before kind of the end of that first year of the program. And at that point, we make kind of recommendations to continue.
Maybe if we just say 4 times during the first year.
Oh, I like that.
I mean, it's going to depend on our availability and all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Day,
So 4
start of each
times.
quarter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might also be helpful for you to define what you would like us to report back on, so that we're prepared with the type of information, whether that's accomplishments, progress,
Right.
challenges, data, whatever that is, to define that.
Yeah. Right. And I think we thought of that a little bit, but it would be better to. So I think we have created a database of complaints and issues to be used for analysis of trends and focus of program resources to address systemic issues. That was one thing that was there. I don't know if we had anything else in that.
Well, I think that list of program outcomes is what they'd be reporting on, the progress on those outcomes.
So program outcomes, I think there's the thing on trends that we want, right? Where are they getting more or less, issues? How are most issues being resolved? Are people choosing the kind of facilitated dialogue route? Are people choosing the, go to government agency route? Anything other than outcomes and trends?
Should we say that at the end of the first year, the need for the committee will be evaluated? I mean, I can assume that if everything's going great, do we need to keep monitoring? Maybe we do, but maybe we, depending on what happens at the end of that first year, we can evaluate, do we keep meeting, do we change, who's in the committee, how frequent.
So maybe the need and structure of the committee will be evaluated after the first year.
You'd like it reported under desired program?
Oh, no, sorry,
Under
in
the
program
leadership.
leadership.
And how about a recommendation for how the program goes forward? We have only money for 1 year.
They capture that?
I think it's both the continuation and structure, right? That we will kind of reevaluate.
Instead of considered, evaluated might be a better word.
The bottom line that you have there really belongs with what happens during that first year. Because then at the end of that, we're going to reconsider how we go forward.
And maybe we take out the committee's structure will remain the same, since we're saying there that we may reconsider the structure.
Saying during the first year.
Oh, do we need to say that, or is that kind of assumed?
I think we should be clear. It's the
Will be the same during the first year?
After, remain the same during the first year.
Maybe we should make clear what our year is, that we're talking about the year from hire date at some point.
Program staff already?
Perfect.
Great. During the first year. Yeah, that flows well. Yep. All right. Is that good? I think that pretty much covers it. Unless anyone's got any.
Do we still want to keep the 1 month following, or leave
Right.
it open to?
Just moving to the 4 meetings for the first year.
I think leaving it to
You're
4
the one
meetings
that
is
deals with our
flexible.
schedules.
Well, not only is your
Yeah.
schedule, but I'm thinking, again, that first month is going to be a lot for the staff. I don't know how much they're going to have to report necessarily.
first month.
And they are going to, be out meeting with individuals and.
Yeah, like I hope we're all going to individually meet with them within the first month, right? But yeah, except for me apparently. But but I like leaving it more flexible, like 4 meetings for the first year.
Yeah.
I do too.
So take out the 1 month.
So maybe we restructure the sentence so it starts with 4 times during the first year of the program.
The staff,
The staff will report back to the Farmworker Research and Enterprise Commission. And then do we need to specify, to Danny's point, that these are kind of public meetings with public comment, or is that assumed?
I think that goes together. It's assumed these are going to be Brown Act, so we'll continue with the exact same structure that we have.
Great.
If I can make a comment real quick, just as a reminder that these are just recommendations. There is a concern that we're drilling too deep into details, and even to the point of like, how will we be replaced as committee members and everything. A lot of this is subject to approval of the Board of Supervisors, and they can decide to go off in a lot of different directions. So these are mere recommendations, not set in stone, and I think that the program will evolve and may go in directions that the committee doesn't even envision right now. So I think the concern was to not consume too much time getting down to specifics on how you're going to survive, in the next year and beyond. I think it's good enough just to make a recommendation that, hey, we would like this committee to have some type of form, maybe with these parameters, and then see what the board does.
What you're saying, they could very well say, the committee, you guys are done, thank you very much.
Possibly. Doubtful, but that is a possible.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
Or you could imagine at some point in the future, right, let's hope long live the Farm Bureau and MyCop for 100 years, right? But at some point in the future, within the next forever, eternity, they might go, oh, maybe we want to just have one member of the board appoint each person, like a lot of other kind of advisory committees in the county are, or something like that, right? See that, but
Now I really want to have this committee.
Okay.
What you say, Joe, is true for we were charged with designing the program, but all of it is subject to board approval.
Absolutely. And step one is to present everything you guys have come up with to establish the program. Then step two is what the board decides to do after that. And it could be a lot of things. You're making a good generalized recommendation on maybe how this committee perpetuates, but it's just a caution to not get too detailed because it may raise expectations, or you may think it'll be locked in and it could change.
I think the first part of everything but the last line there has to do with our carrying out the charge that they've given us to monitor and evaluate. Would it be better to take out the last line there about what happens next?
Maybe.
I mean, that's kind of going to happen anyway by the board.
Right. The board is going to be the one. They will do that or not do it. I would leave that to their discretion.
Yeah.
Is it worth saying, for the sake of that we are going to do that in the fourth meeting, and we'll make recommendations to the board, but the board is, or maybe at the end of the first year of the program, the advisory committee will make recommendations to the board as for the continuing.
Potentially, or the model that I maybe see is that the board, if the board of supervisors agrees to have the committee meet, HSA staff will be here, and your comments will be picked up by HSA staff, much like it has been for the last year, and HSA then will make a presentation to the board of supervisors that will contain those comments. That's kind of what I think, rather than you guys establishing a subcommittee that then writes a report to the board of supervisors. I think instead you can talk about your concerns, things you like, things you don't like about the program. HSA then will take that and put it into a package and a presentation to the board of supervisors.
Much rather have you do it.
Well, I'm fine taking out that last line if you want that. Is this good then? We have a motion to approve the changes to the program leadership section.
One other thing. I don't know if you want to necessarily lock in the 1 year time frame from the program's hiring date. Maybe leave that, strike that, just
during the first year of the program?
During the first year of the program. And then maybe the board can come up with, or HSA can come up with what it measures as the 1 year measuring period.
Also, did we, to Melissa's question earlier, provide updates to what? Do we need to lay that out here, or were you more just wanting that from us verbally here?
I think as we would move forward, that we just need to be clear on that. And I think we have a good sense of what that is. Just wanted to make sure the committee was clear on what we were expecting.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve this section?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? All right. Well, I think that completes our agenda. I guess the only thing is we have another meeting scheduled, and I guess the question is, do we need to use it? Or would everyone be happier with another 2 hours there? It seems like we've kind of got through everything to me. But,
Yeah.
Do we know when it's going to the board?
It would be it's the last Tuesday of September, which would be the 25th. The 25th of September, we will have a designated time in which we will email each one of the committee members the exact time that we have the presentation to the board. And we will also include participants that we have here, whose emails we have, and also have been receiving our agendas that we've been distributing electronically. We will also make sure to go and reach out to them and let them know where the presentation will also be to the board.
Cool. Well, do we need a motion to remove that meeting from the?
No. That was just the tentative schedule for our planning purposes. It wasn't like a.
It hasn't been noticed or anything like that. So we don't need to. Great. Well, I guess now's a great time for our committee member final comments after all of the talking that we've done so late into the night, so many nights. Any last words? Well, I guess I'll just say that most of all, I want to thank everyone who has come and put so much time into this. All of our committee members, of course, but the county staff that has just put so much into this, and I think the resources of the county that that we dedicate to that. The members of the board of supervisors staff, our interpreters. And really, most of all, the members of the public, who I know these meetings can feel sometimes long and confusing and full of a lot of details that sometimes seem necessary and sometimes don't. But I think the fact that so many of the members of the public came here and spent so much time here shows how much it means to people. And how important and needed this program is, and it really was incredible to me to have so many folks here be part of this in so many ways. And I think processes like this aren't perfect, and there's a lot of compromises along the way, and there's tension and arguments. But I think overall we really created the best thing that we could. And I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. And I think as well as the work that we did to create a program, I think we're also creating something else, which is a greater level of communication and collaboration between a lot of folks who are farmworker labor issues have a long history here in this county and everywhere else of kind of contention and difficulty, and so I'm hoping that this is not just creating a program that's going to kind of create a new feature here, but also creating a level of collaboration and relationships that are going to carry a lot of those benefits with them as well. So I want to just thank everyone for kind of putting your trust in this, and I hope that we don't let that trust down, and I have a lot of faith and a lot of hope.
Amen.
Oh, public comment. All right.
Anything not on the agenda?
Yeah. Do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda, or just final public comments from anyone?
Araceli Preciado, community organizer with Cause. I'm just happy to see all this, like you said, coming to these meetings and all this stuff, trying to bring leaders in. But I really appreciate you guys thinking of including the community members, especially those who are going to be enrolled in either the program or something. And then still just right now your conversation about moving along with the like kind of meeting, but still including the community, I think is very important, because the way I see it, we all have been working together to improve, the working conditions of our farm workers in this community. So I think we all want to see this succeed, and I think moving forward, still working together to make sure that happens. So thank you so much.
Any other public comments? All right. Well, with that, we have a motion to adjourn. Final meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good, you're on the committee. You're on the committee. Nice job, Chair.
Good job, Luke.
Yes.
Right, we talked.
Yeah.